This episode discusses themes of grief, loss, and mental health. Please take care while listening. Este episodio discute temas acerca del duelo, pérdida y la salud mental. Por favor, toma precauciones al escucharlo. Hi, I am Monica Rodriguez, and welcome to Aquí I Am. This is the first full episode of our journey together, and I wanted to begin with something close to my heart. A story that is mine, but maybe, in some ways, is yours too. I call it the ocean I am. In essence, I see myself as a canvas, and my paint has been mixed with so many colors: pain, joy, despair, hope, and love. For a long time, I believe I was a portrait painted mostly in pain, undeserving of the love floating freely in the universe. I had evidence, or so I thought, proof that I was unlovable, or at least that others made me feel that way. If you were born into a household full of busy people, you might know what I mean. You feel like your existence is an interruption, like you were dropped into someone else's life as a burden to their dreams. You begin to think, maybe I wasn't meant to take up space here. You stop expressing yourself. You shrink. Eventually, your truth becomes a quiet ritual of slowly disappearing. I remember being 14 and writing poetry I never showed anyone. I wrote it in Spanish, my first language, because it felt safer, more secret somehow. One line from 2011 still echoes in me today. Aunque el limón caiga en mis heridas y duela mucho, debo aprender a enfrentarlo con una sonrisa. Even if the lemon falls on my wounds and it hurts so much, I must learn to face it with a smile. That was me trying to hold pain with hope, quietly, alone, and never letting anyone see those words. In my home, emotions often felt like intrusions, and silence felt safer. I didn't want to be a burden, so I chose invisibility. That's how most of my teenage years felt. Then I moved to the US, and somehow, being away from my homeland gave me the freedom to show all my colors, without the fear, without the mental checklist of who I was supposed to be. Leaving Venezuela wasn't just a physical move, it was a soul shift. Everything I knew, every place that held me, I left behind. But distance brought clarity. In the US, freedom looked different for me. I could go out to parties without a curfew. I could take trips without begging for permission. I even dyed my hair blonde, just because I wanted to. Small things, maybe. But at the time, they felt revolutionary. They weren't about rebellion. They were about finally belonging to myself. For the first time, I started to wonder what it meant to feel free. Not in a political sense, but in my own body, in my own mind. But not everyone celebrated that. People who once claimed to love me unconditionally began labeling me rebellious, defiant, careless. I internalized those feelings, turned love into despair. Nothing mattered, and I became 100% committed to destroying myself. There were years when life felt like grayscale. I carried loss I couldn't speak about, my brother's passing, the heartbreak of losing someone who showed me love in its purest form. One memory that always stayed with me is how much he loved to dance. He was the life of the party, the one who could pull anyone onto the dance floor and make the whole room feel alive. Even my mom once said how alike we were, because for me too, dancing is where I can be fully authentically me. Maybe that's part of why losing him left such an ache. In his presence, joy was effortless, and without him, joy felt harder to find. The silence after he was gone echoed louder than my own voice. I reached points where even breathing felt impossible. But somehow, piece by piece, through stillness, through writing, through a love I didn't expect, I began to come back to myself. That journey is still unfolding, and that's what this space is for, truth-telling, even when it shakes. What shaped this spiral wasn't just rejection, it was heartbreak, it was grief, it was the death of loved ones, all the things that leave you hollow. At some point, I forgot how to hear, not in the literal sense, but how do you describe what it's like to exist and no longer hear your own heartbeat, your own breath? I kept moving through life, checking boxes, smiling when I was supposed to, saying I'm fine when I wasn't. The truth was, I had disconnected so deeply from myself that I didn't notice how hollow I become until the silence caught up with me. I was numb, lost, drowning in 1,000 ways, not hiding from the world, hiding from myself, not because the noise was too loud, but because the silence was. It was the stillness that shook me awake, not a breakdown, not a dramatic collapse, just silence. The kind that echoes so loudly inside you, it shakes every mountain in your mind. I remember one evening, I cooked my favorite meal, oatmeal pancakes with bacon and spicy scrambled eggs. I cleaned the dishes, sat down with my plate ready, and then I just stared at it. I don't know how long I sat there, eyes fixed, completely lost in the quiet. I couldn't bring myself to take a bite. That was when I realized how empty I felt, not because of noise, but because of silence. That's when I began again. Today, I am grateful, grateful for those who stayed, and grateful for those who walked away. I've chosen to tend to the garden of my soul, to water it every single day, with kindness, patience, and self-compassion. Hay una canción que me acompaña últimamente y me dejó esto. La luz insiste en entrar, y solo lo hace cuando somos transparentes con nosotros mismos. The light only makes its way in when we are transparent with ourselves. So if you ask me now, who am I will say, I am the ocean. An ocean that for too long allowed waste to be dumped into it. Pain, rejection, shame, fear, but I'm cleaning it up, bit by bit. Some parts will stay stained. Maybe that's okay. Maybe the key isn't to scrub the salt from the sea, but to accept it. Nature is imperfect, and still, it's the most breathtaking thing we know. So why should we try to be anything but imperfect? As you leave this episode, I invite you to think about your ocean. What have you carried for too long? What parts of you feel stained, but maybe, just maybe, make you even more beautiful? If it feels right, take a quiet moment this week to write it down. One weight you're ready to release, and one imperfect part of yourself you're learning to honor. Keep it in a journal, a note on your phone, or fold it into your pocket, because even the quietest waves reshape the shore, and even in stillness, you are becoming. If this met you gently today, subscribe to the podcast and come say hi on Instagram at Aquí I Am. Thank you for sharing this space with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little lighter, a little more seen, and a little more in love with your own story. Until next Sunday, Aquí I Am, and I hope in your own way, aquí you are too. If you are in the US and need support right now, you are not alone. Call or text 988, Suicide Crisis Lifeline. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. More helplines are in today's show notes.